Good evening everybody and welcome back to another AOR social race. Tonight we have a very strong grid actually of almost 20 drivers taking on the Spanish Grand Prix, which should actually be a track that throws up a pretty interesting race on this game. I'm Ali Kid and joining me in the commentary box this evening is Curly.
Hey man, how you doing?
Very well actually, and hopefully we get some decent racing tonight.
Yeah, it's a really interesting grid actually. This is something that's been put together by Ben, or some of you might know him as Demon. And you know, one thing about AOR constantly growing and the leagues getting bigger and bigger is for us coordinators, it gets more difficult every single time to start splitting those drivers into the separate tiers. You know, the gaps between the drivers get smaller and smaller. So this is an event that's been kind of put on by us coordinators for those drivers who are, you know, possibly F2, maybe just getting into the borderline of F1, and there's a lot of competition around, you know, maybe the final few spots in that F1 grid. So for these guys out there today, it should be a really close field, and there's a possibility that, you know, if they do well here, if they do well in their evaluation race, and if they have good time trials, that there's an F1 drive available for them.
Yeah, it's another chance for all of these drivers to show just how good they are and to stake a claim for one of the 20 spots in the very, very prestigious top tier of AOR on the PS4. And all of these drivers are pretty marginal as to whether they're going to be in F1 or F2, and that's what we are looking at today. And this is just something else alongside the time trials, alongside the evaluation races, to just have a look at how good they are. And one of those drivers, as we're riding on board with, is Kian, who has actually recently joined Jim Racing Junior team, which is a team he used to be involved with back on I think previous F1's games, back on the PS3 and everything, and recently he's looking pretty quick on this game, and I think F1 is definitely going to be his target. He's been racing F1 in quite a few seasons in the past, and I imagine that is definitely going to be his target, and it'd be great to have him back. His driver's had a number of podiums in the past, and I think would be a great addition to the league.
Yeah, Kian got a bit of a habit of showing up sort of mid-season and coming in as a reserve. He's done that a couple times in the last few seasons, but he's decided this time round that he wants to be there from the very offset. He did come in and grab actually a podium in his first race last season in Belgium, which was one of those sort of dry to wet races, a bit chaotic on the strategy, and he absolutely nailed that. So it was a great result for him, and he's shown particularly, in my opinion, some great defensive driving compared to some of the others. So I'm interested to see what he does tonight, and you know, he's always one that will get himself in the perfect position due to his strategy, and then be able to hold on to it from that defensive driving. Yeah,
an awful lot of experience, which is actually something that probably can't be said for many of these drivers. A lot of them are new or haven't been in the top tier before, so it's a big learning curve for all of them. But I can assure you, if you get put in the F1 league, you learn awfully quickly a lot of racecraft, because it's like being thrown in at the deep end, and you have the fastest drivers on the game around you. And from my own experiences, I can tell you that it doesn't take very long to settle right in at all. And one of those new drivers actually is Ash Best, who has shown some incredible pace in another league on the PS4, PSGL. He's very, very young and very, very quick, and I think he's recently switched to no assist, so even bigger learning curve for him, but I think there's a lot to come from him in the future.
Yeah, it's always a difficult move, that move from, you know, using assists to then, you know, coming in and turning them all off. I think particularly for drivers, turning the racing line off can be the most challenging thing out of all of that. I mean, I remember, you know, my first couple races without the racing line, because I used that back on F1 2016 and was really quite dependent on it. And, you know, being so far off of the pace, and it's very difficult when you first start out, but, you know, you just got to put in the time. And from what I've seen from Ash Best so far, he's definitely put in the time to learn that, and you know, seems to have picked up the no assists fairly quickly compared to some other drivers. Yep,
I would agree with that. Provisionally on pole position, we have Alex, who is a very, very experienced driver. He's been in this league for a very long time, pretty much since it became the league that it is now in season 11 on F1 2015, and he's had a lot of good seasons in the past, but recently it's not been quite so good for him. Since the start of 2017, he hasn't been quite the driver he used to be, I'd say. Back in season 11 and season 12, he was 100% a front runner, but to me it seems like he's dropped back a little bit since then.
Yeah, I think Alex had some troubles with F1 2017. I think particularly due to
Yeah.
the setups. I mean, obviously, once we got a little bit of the way into season 14, around about Bahrain, Russia, people worked out that you could run the very high ballasts with the huge wing offsets, and it seemed like ever since we hit that point in F1 2017, Alex's performance has dropped off a little bit compared to how he was before. He did have a decent season last season, finished 5th in the championship, did pick up a win in Belgium, but it seems like that was more down to the strategy and him nailing that rather than outright pace. Whereas if you look at his results on 2016, you've got to say that he was right up there in terms of raw pace with the very best.
Oh yeah, and you say he's definitely a driver that should be up there at the front, but hasn't quite always managed to be there consistently in recent times. But we should probably reiterate at this point, he is probably not one of the drivers that we're actually looking at to be in F1 and 2 in this race. I think we're pretty set that he's going to be in F1 given his past and given his pace on this game, and he's just here kind of to host really, and as a bit of a benchmark for the other drivers would be the way I would put it. But he's currently on provisional pole position with a 16.5, and we're expecting pole to be around low 16s, high 15s would be my guess. And it really does depend, I think, how aggressive you go with the setup, because like the last game, it's really about how high you can run the ballast and still make the car drivable. Except on this game, the ballast has even more of an effect, and it's very, very hard to drive when you have high ballast. So those who are quick in qualifying maybe are going to struggle quite a lot in the race.
Yeah, but there's definitely more of an opportunity on this game to look towards a race setup rather than a qualifying setup. F1 2017 with the difficulties of overtaking, it being basically an easy one stop at every single circuit, and also some issues like the slipstream glitch and whatnot that would regularly come into play. You had this situation where you had to focus almost entirely on your qualifying and getting that right, because passing in the race was so difficult, and there were very few drivers that were able to consistently make their way through the field. There's only a couple, to be honest, in all of the top tiers that were able to do that. Whereas on this game, overtaking is certainly much easier than on 2017. So you can afford to compromise that qualifying setup a little bit to give you a better race setup without getting stuck in the middle of a train for the whole race. So I think for the drivers, especially at this track, they might be going for something a bit more conservative than we would have seen on the last game.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think on this game as well, the racing is definitely, in my opinion, a lot better, simply because that the slipstream is a little bit more effective, and the fact that the ERS allows you to be much more tactical, and it means that overtaking is just a whole lot easier, and it just makes races so much more entertaining to watch, and that little bit more difficult as a driver. Having the ERS to manage as well, on top of your tyres and on top of your fuel, can be a real challenge.
Yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to. I mean, 2017 was, like I said earlier, once, and in particular getting undercuts on other drivers, whereas you hop back onto this game, and we had a social race in China where I think the podium was 3 radically different strategies, and that never would have happened on F1 2017. So it's kind of a bit of a learning curve for a lot of the drivers yet again to work out what to do on strategy, and it's so radically different from track to track on this game that yeah, I mean there's a huge amount to learn for the drivers, and even for a race like this, they've got to put in a fair amount of preparation for it, just so that they don't get kind of mugged on strategy by someone else.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge amount more strategic variation as well on this game, with the tyre wear seeming to be a little bit higher, and as well with the new tyre carcass temperatures, they change so much more. Oh, that is an awful corner cut from Davidos there. They change a lot more slowly than on the previous game. So if you overheat your tyres badly, they are absolutely cooked, and that is almost that set of tyres completely done for the rest of the race. And again, it makes it that much more difficult for the drivers, and means you have to put in that much more practice to be competitive and to know what you're doing on strategy, because it has a much bigger impact on this game.
Yeah, and it's, it really brings into the opening stint of the race on these softer compound tires, because the softer compound tires are much easier to overheat than the harder compound. So in that first stint of the race, you really need to be managing these tires with the heavy fuel load, because if you do overheat them and those carcass temperatures go too high, you're going to start losing, multiple seconds per lap and have to pit. So yeah, this game, there's a lot more management to it with the tires and also with the ERS, and that's something that the drivers just won't be used to after doing a whole year on F1 2017.
Yeah, I mean, with the new game, it's always a big learning curve, but I think with all the new additions and the big changes that we've had for this game, I think that's exacerbated tenfold in my opinion. It's so much more difficult to get to grips with this game than it was on the last game and on 2016 as well, which were largely similar to their predecessors. This one is radically different and there is so much more to learn. So I think during the course of this game we're going to see a big change in pace from a lot of drivers. It's much more possible, I think, to go from being not quite on the pace at the start and struggling with managing all these different things to being right on it at the end would be my thoughts on that one.
Yeah, and especially with the length of the season as well, it's going to be a 21 race season for season 16. So even if you're having a tough time part of the season and maybe things aren't quite going your way, there's always the opportunity that you'll be able to learn quicker than the other drivers and come back hard at the end of the season because you've got so much time to do it in, and that's a big difference from the second season on a game to the first, where the second season is generally only about 15 races, and if you have a couple per results, that can really affect your championship standing, whereas when you've got 21 races, you got those extra opportunities and can definitely make up for a few per performances.
Yeah, I think the shorter seasons were definitely much more intense because you knew one mistake, one bad race, and that's almost you out of the championship before it's even begun. But with 21 races on the calendar, you knew you always had time to recover if you had a bad race. If you missed a few races, there was always a chance to get those points back and come back towards the end of the season. But it definitely makes it very entertaining. There's a lot going on in a 21 race season, and it means we get to take in every single track on the calendar. It's a much bigger challenge for drivers, and it really is a spectacle to have almost 6 months of racing at every single track on the calendar with the best drivers on the game. Can't think of much better, to be honest.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And, just thinking about how close this grid is at the moment, from 1st to 12th is only covered by 0.7 of a second. So considering that we've, only got 15 cars here, got to imagine how close these grids are going to be when we've got 20 on the grid for Melbourne. But yeah, Alex currently leading the way with a 16.3. Sean, who was the F1 reserve at the end of last season up there with a 16.3 as well. And then we've got Davidos in 3rd and RC Spider in 4th. Those guys, very, very close. You look at the times between Spider, Big C Hamilton, and McGrady. There's really nothing between that. And those are the qualifyings where you remember that one tiny moment of oversteer and just regret it because you've lost 4 places on the grid because of it.
That is crazy though. That is what, 4 or 5 drivers on a 16.4, separated by less than 1/10 of a second. That is insane, but currently it is Alex on pole with a 16.3. We expect pole position to probably be a little bit faster than that. We're imagining a 1/10 or 2 maybe found towards the end of the session. And Sean actually was putting a stellar lap to be less than half a tenth behind him. That is so close. He's very unlucky to be behind him because that is ridiculous how close that is. And I imagine he will have the bit between his teeth on his next lap to try and make up that, what, 3... very small margin of time we're going to go with there. But this last lap in qualifying, we imagine everyone is probably going to improve just because the track evolution makes it that little bit easier to go a bit faster. But the added thing that comes with that is the added pressure of knowing this is your last run in qualifying and you have to nail this, otherwise your grid position is not getting any better.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit less pressure on the drivers in these 18-minute sessions. On 2017, you only had 12 minutes, and with the track evolution on that game, it was it almost felt like a one-shot qualifying in a lot of tracks because the final run would be 3 to 4 tenths faster than your first run. So, and 3 to 4 tenths, especially in the top couple of tiers, can be 8, 9, 10 places on the grid. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit less pressure on each individual qualifying run, but the track evolution is still pretty strong in this game. So there's a lot of time to find in those final few minutes of the session. And speaking of somebody who's fine time, RC Spider with a 16 flat, been done a bit of a benchmark there, and yeah, he'll be making his way back into the pits. I think he'll still have time to make it back around and go for a final run, but that's a great lap from him.
Yeah, absolutely stonking lap, almost 3 tenths faster than everybody else, and that really is a mental challenge for the rest of the drivers. Seeing, before any of them have gone out on their final runs in qualifying, seeing that benchmark slammed down in front of them, they know what it's going to take to get pole in this race, but now they have the added pressure of seeing exactly what it is they have to do, and they'll have their eyes on that delta in the top right hand corner of the screen the entire time, and it's just that little bit more pressure, knowing what you have to do and knowing the benchmark that's already been set. But yeah, what a lap from Spider in that Force India, and talk about staking a claim for an F1 seat.
Yeah, is doing exactly what he needs to put his name in that conversation. A really brilliant lap from him. I'm on board with Stocky at the moment, who, you know, he was in F2 last season, showed some fantastic pace, was actually leading the championship for a while before having to miss some of the races in the final part of the season. I believe that he spent some time in Germany, so he's normally in the UK, so he missed out on possibly a chance to win the F2 title. That was very tight between him, Tactician, and Iceman. But yeah, I mean, for Stocky, he's just about to cross the line here. It's looked like a little bit of a scruffy final sector from him. And is he going to improve? I don't think that he is, so he's going to have to go for a second lap here, and there's always a risk on the second lap that you might actually run out of your you know, sort of ERS just before the end of the lap, because it is possible to use slightly more than half a bar on the one lap. So we'll see if that's an issue for him.
Yeah, again, it's just that little bit more management that you have to worry about going into qualifying. Normally, on previous games, it was easy just to do 2 consecutive laps, but now you have that added difficulty to think about as well. But Stocky down in 13th place, currently 1.4 seconds off of pole position. Now that is a big margin, particularly if you want to be in the top tier for next season. But this lap seems to be coming together fairly well for him as he goes through turn 9, the highest speed corner on the track. And I have to say, on this game, it feels absolutely amazing. You just throw it in and the car just sticks. It feels absolutely incredible with these cars, and it was managed pretty well by Stocky there. But this final sector is as difficult as ever, as the car gets a little bit out of shape through that little bump. It always throws the car off balance there. And is that a sign that Stocky's lap is starting to fall away from him? Coming into the final chicane, he needs to find a lot of time. He needs this lap to come together, and he's given up. He's backed off and he's retired from the session. So that has not been an ideal qualifying session for Stocky, as we have 45 seconds left in this session. Everybody is about to start their final laps in this qualifying session as Alex starts his lap. He needs to find 3/10 on this lap to get himself back onto pole position ahead of RC Spider, and the entire grid, apart from the man on provisional pole, is on a lap, and this is going to get very, very interesting here.
Yeah, I got Sam about to cross the line. I've raced with this guy in Season 14. He's very, very quick on his day, driving the Toro Rosso here, and he does improve, but it's only up to 8th place, a 16.6 for Sam. See if we can find the next car. We've got McGrady just crossing the line now as well. He improves up to 5th place with a 16.4. He joins that group there, just grabbing himself a couple of positions. He backs out of the session, so he won't be going for a second lap as well. Davidos in the final sector. He's normally pretty strong in qualifying, although he did have some, you got to say, fairly uncharacteristic issues for him with that in Season 15. He just struggled to hook up the final laps. We'll see if he's able to do it here today, and he isn't. Once again, not able to improve on that final run. So, yeah, Davidos sitting with the best of a 16.4. Who else have we got just about to cross the line? Sean about to cross the line. He's, interestingly enough, he's in overtake mode instead of hot lap, and he does improve to a 16.2. So that's an interesting strategy out of the final corner from him. Overtake mode will give you a little bit of extra, you know, top end speed in 7th and 8th gear, but it does burn more of your energy than you're allowed to use in one single lap. So most people generally stick to hot lap, but yeah, interesting strategy from him.
Yeah, I wonder whether that would have gained him a few tenths, or whether he would have been able to manage his ERS properly across the whole lap to be able to have that overtake to use right at the end. But VSR Hamilton is about to come up to the line. He goes 4th actually, and he's another one to join the 16.4 club, and he moves ahead of everybody else on a 16.4 up into 4th place, and that is a very impressive lap. And tactically as well from him, that was very, very astute, being the last person to cross the line and having the best track conditions of everybody. It does give you that little bit of added pressure that you know you have no time left if that lap goes wrong, but that was almost perfect from Hamilton, and he's got himself up into P4. So let's run you through the provisional grid then as everybody's heading back into their pit boxes. It is Spider who has pole position by almost 0.2 of a second from Sean in P2, who put in a very impressive lap in the Toro Rosso, and Alex, who actually moved down into P3, didn't improve on his final lap. I don't know whether he'll be happy with that. Oh, nice AI. Don't know whether he'll be happy with that one.
Yeah, well, you mentioned strategy there just for a moment, and I just want to bring something up. Key in there in 15th place with a 17.7. However, he set that lap on the soft compound tires, so I think he's taking a bit of a gamble. He's going to start right at the back, but he's looking to get himself on a slightly alternate strategy from many of the other drivers. We'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it plenty of times in the past in him starting outside the top 10 and going on the harder compound of tyre. But let's run you through the grid then for this Spanish Grand Prix social race. It is Spider on pole position from Sean in P2 with Alex down in P3. And VSR Hamilton got himself up into P4 right at the very end of that session with Davidos in P5, McGrady in P6, Ash Best ahead of Big C in 7th and 8th. And then H Eagles with RC Sam rounding out the top 10. The first person with free tyre choice, crucially, is H Racing Green. That could be big for this race. With Dam Daniel, Vettel Racer, Stocky and Kian rounding out the grid. I feel like there might have been one more person, but I couldn't quite get to him in time, so I'm sorry if that was you. But what are your thoughts coming into the race then, Curly?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what these guys outside of the top 10 go for. If they go for a set of the softs or maybe even a set of mediums and run very long. We're a little unsure in terms of the strategy. We think that the drivers inside the top 10 may attempt to stretch it out for a one stop, but they may have to bail onto a two stop, especially if they're harder on their tires. So for those starting outside the top 10, maybe start on a set of softs or mediums and you know, then use the two harder compounds available and try to one stop it. That could be, you know, very, very good for them if they're able to pull that off and they don't get held up too much in the first stint, and I think most importantly, don't break the front wing.
Yeah, I mean, that is going to be a big thing in this race. Strategic variation is something we're expecting a lot of, and it to be a recurring theme throughout this first season on this game as people look to find what are the best strategies. And personally, I think the people starting outside the top 10 have a big, big chance in this race, as the super soft tyres really are not going to last very long at all. And I imagine starting on the harder compounds is really going to help, but it's the formation lap, actually. I didn't realise that was on. It's been a while since we've seen a formation lap on this game. It wasn't on the previous game, but I feel like it must be fixed on this game, and now we have it back, and it's a nice feature to see. And I believe it does actually now make a difference if you warm your tyres up or not, because of the new carcass temperatures. If you start the race with ice-cold tyres, you're going to be in big trouble coming into turn 1.
Yeah, so just a couple notes on that. You know, obviously we did some testing with socials as the game came out, and basically, you know, we thought that there might be an issue with the formation lap and with people disconnecting and rejoining. Turns out that that wasn't the case, and some of those issues have been fixed as well in the previous patches. But yeah, it does look like the formation lap is ready and working. And just on the tire temperatures there, I mean, it really does make a huge difference. In the France social that we did at the start of the game, we had a glitch on the grid where two drivers were able to drive away and the rest of the drivers were stuck there. And starting that race, we were stuck on the grid for a good sort of 2 minutes. So we all started the race with just completely zero tire temperature, which was one of the most terrifying first laps of race I've ever done. So yeah, definitely warming up the tires is really important on this formation lap. You can see the drivers weaving around, and that's not something that you would see on previous games. So I'm very glad that Codemasters have added that in. And just a note on the tires as well, all of the drivers outside of the top 10 opting for the soft compound tires, so they'll be looking, I think, at the one stop. And interestingly, nobody going for the mediums, so nobody wanting to run past the halfway point, you would assume, in the race. But yeah, for those guys on the softs, they you know, they might be a little bit slower on the start and find it tough in the first lap or two, but once those softs get up to temperature, they should be very, very quick. And then, you know, maybe with the better slipstream on this game, they might start, you know, picking their way through the field and gaining some places as the first stint goes on, because these super soft tires, from what I've heard of the drivers, they're quite difficult to manage. Yeah,
I can imagine the super softs are going to be a right pain for these drivers to manage in the top 10, as it is actually really interesting to see we have a dead split in strategy between the top 10 and the rest of the field. So we were talking about strategic variation. It looks like it's split almost half and half, with the bottom 5 drivers going for the softs and the top 10 having to start on the tyres that they qualified on in qualifying. Oh, and obviously them being the super soft tyres. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out then. But here we go then, revving up to 5 red lights for the Spanish Grand Prix. We are ready to go racing in Spain. We have 5 red lights. Lights out and away we go. It's a pretty even start from everybody. Look at the smoke on the grid. A huge amount of wheel spin, but Spider already moves over to cover turn 1, and one of the Ferraris is off slightly to the right hand side. I think it's Davidos taken to the glass as the Force India covers off Alex very aggressively as Sean looks to the outside of turn 1. He's been squeezed off. He's having to take a little bit too much curb on the left hand side, as Alex as well had to take to the curb as well. I think they're side by side through turn 3. The Ferrari and the Toro also make contact as Spider is driving away into the distance. Alex having to go defensive into turn turn 4. He's still side by side with Sean, who is not giving up this position. He's going to have the inside for the next corner as it's 2x2 behind them as well. Alex locks up slightly but manages to maintain the position ahead of Sean, ahead of Davidos, as VSR Hamilton has lost a position behind them, and Big C up into 6th place behind them.
Yeah, some fantastic racing off the start, but someone who's gained an unbelievable amount of positions. With Stocky up into 8th already. He's gained 6 positions on the first lap. An absolutely flying start from the Renault driver on the soft compound tires. So he might have struggled in qualifying, but he's certainly not struggling on lap 1 here. He's already trying to line up another move on Ash Best, but can't quite get it done. But yeah, great battling from these guys. I don't think I saw anything in the way of wing damage into turn 1, although it is pretty difficult to see from the onboard cameras in this game due to the halo. Somewhat getting in the way of the front wing, but hopefully we don't have anybody peeling into the pits on lap 1 here. But yeah, what a fantastic start from these guys.
The only bit of contact I saw behind was VP McGrady spinning off at turn 6 or 7. I don't know who he made contact with, but it seems like he's lost quite a bit of time and he finds himself now right at the back of the grid, which is not a good start for him at all, as I think that is Damn Daniel making a move up into P11. He is now the 2nd best runner on these soft compound tyres, but going back to Stocky, what a start from that man. The highest runner on these soft tyres, and he has put himself in one hell of a position for the rest of the race. He's on the ideal strategy and already has gained a huge amount of track position, so he is definitely going to be one to watch for the remainder of this race. As back up to the front, RC Spider is starting to drive away from Alex behind just a little bit. I'm not entirely sure how strong the dirty air is on this game, but it appears that Spider is able to, at the moment, just about pull out of DRS range.
Yeah, I'd say the dirty air, it's definitely noticeable when you're driving behind another car, but I would say it's easier to stay within 1 second on this game than it was on F1 2017, just because you've got that bit of slipstream help on the straight. So I would expect to see maybe a bit of a train here in this first stint if the drivers aren't able to pass. But now it's all about, for these guys, someone like Sean, who's right up on the back of Alex. For him, it's about managing his energy and finding a point where Alex is weak and then putting the car up into overtake and going for it. And the only issue he's going to have at this circuit is that there aren't really that many overtaking opportunities. It's really only into turn 1, and then possibly, if you get a good run out of 9, into turn 10 and that sort of heavy braking zone. But it's not exactly the easiest track to pass at.
No, it's definitely not, and it's probably one of the tracks where dirty air probably has its biggest effect of any of the tracks on the calendar, really. It's a lot of medium and high speed corners. Apart from the final sector, we don't really have that many low speed corners. So if you're following another car and you're not, well, you don't have that much slipstream, you're going to be struggling to stay with them, because it really is a lot more difficult around this track than many others. And as well as that, following another car is really not going to do your tyre temperatures any favours whatsoever, and that is another thing to take into account with the strategy in this race. And it just, again, points to RC Spider having a pretty nice race at the moment. He has clear air and a big gap to Alex behind.
Yeah, he's just got to do his best to try and keep himself out of that DRS range from Alex. So long as he can keep himself outside of that 1 second window, he's looking in a really good position here. And, for guys like Alex and then possibly Davidos as well, I think right now would be the time, burn a bit of extra energy and just try and get yourself within that DRS window so that you can get that free couple of tenths a lap that comes with the DRS flap opening that will be enabled now on this lap. So, yeah, I mean, for the guys that are just falling away, I think now's the time to push and just really try to get yourself within that margin, because you do gain quite a lot of time on this game from having the DRS. Definitely.
It appears that at the moment Davidos is causing a bit of a train. He has dropped back from Sean and Alex in front of him, and he's now got an awful lot of cars directly behind him, and pretty much the entire rest of the field is within DRS range of the car in front once you get past Davidos. So from P4 to P15 pretty much is in this one pack, which is just insane. And I think we're going to see some pretty good racing from these guys towards, well, for the rest of this race really. But looking further towards the front, Sean is following Alex so closely. Alex really doesn't seem to have the pace of the other two front runners at this point in the race. He's dropping back from Spider by a couple of tenths a lap, and Sean seems to be all over the back of him. He is so close. Even through this final sector, he's able to follow very closely, and I imagine with Alex not having DRS into turn 1, he will probably be looking to try and make a move there. He's got to try and get past early, because it appears that Alex is holding him up a little bit and he doesn't want to get embroiled in a battle or lose too much time and then find that Davidos and, well, the entire rest of the field has come up behind him, and, well, it appears that's exactly what happened, as we now have a train from 2nd to 15th in this race.
Yeah, Slipstream and DRS working pretty well here, as Big C is the first one into the pits on what is lap 4 for him. I'll keep an eye on this and see if this is for a wing change or just a strategy call. I think it's just strategy. So Big C is kind of blinking early, going onto the soft compound tires, and that surely must be a 2-stop. But he wants to get himself out of that train, get himself in clean air, and really start to pump in some good lap times and possibly undercut a few of the guys ahead. Bold strategy call from him, but I think Big C's kind of known for that. Yeah,
I mean, he has plenty of experience, I think it's safe to say. So if he makes a call, we can probably safely assume that there is some kind of sensible logic behind it, and it does make a lot of sense. He was right in the middle of that pack, and he was probably losing an awful lot of time stuck there, and thinks that with clear air, he is going to be able to go so much faster than all of these guys. And even on lap 4, these super soft tyres are definitely going to be going off, and their lap times will be starting to drop off. As now, speaking of dropping off, RC Spider is starting to go backwards, and his gap to Alex has halved in half a lap, really, and it looks like he is really starting to struggle, possibly on his tyres, and that might be why Alex is all over the back of him as we come out of the final chicane, and the Force Seniors into the pits, and Alex comes in as well, and Sean as well, and the entire field almost is coming into the pit lane here. All of the top 3 peel into the pits at the same time. That leaves Davidos to have clear air, and now he has to push. If he wants to have any chance of getting a podium in this race, he needs to absolutely fly on this lap, because I think that undercut is going to be pretty strong.
Yeah, Stocky absolutely flying past Ash Best on the straight there. Ash Best had no chance. So Stocky now up into P3 on his soft compound tires. He's really making those work well. And yeah, these guys in the front coming into the pits, trying to cover off Big C. Big C has already picked off one of them. Sean's had a fairly slow pit stop, actually. He's lost a few seconds there. So Big C all over the back of Alex as well. He's going to have warm tires. These guys leaving the pits, their tires need a little bit of time to heat up. And Big C kind of weaving around there, but we actually forces Alex into a mistake. Alex runs very wide. Big C going to make a move now in the second sector, possibly on the brakes, trying to hang it all the way around the outside. Alex is just about holding on. He's maybe going to squeeze him onto the curb. Good, fair racing here between these two guys. You know, they've raced with each other a long time, and definitely know that you can trust each other going side by side, leaving lots of space. And yeah, Big C had a look. He tried his best there, but Alex just about holds on to the position and maintains what is well, I mean, maybe net P2. It's hard to say with the strategy options. We've also got Spider out of this group. He's gone to the medium compound tires, so maybe he doesn't have too much confidence in terms of the soft compound. I'm thinking surely it's too early to attempt to make it to the end on a one-stop. So yeah, something different on the strategy here for Spider, but he's going to have a queue of soft compound running drivers right behind him looking for a way past.
Yeah, I'm not sure at the moment about the logic of that strategy call, as Spider is the only one without DRS here. Alex is sat in his slipstream with the DRS wide open, and that means Big C is not able to make a move as Alex looks down the inside into turn 1, and he gets past the medium-clad Force India of Spider, and that is crucial for his race against Big C, because now Big C is going to be sat behind a car on the medium tyres, and he cannot make the most of those soft tyres for at least a few corners more, as Force Senior is a little bit wide. And look how close Big C is to the back of that Force Senior. He is absolutely all over him, but cannot find a way past. He's probably going to have to wait half a lap still until we get back to the main straight and he can have a go into turn 1, because Spider at the moment is still going to be getting DRS from Alex into turn 10, so I doubt he'll be able to make a move there. And this is really holding up Big C. It looks like it was an incredible strategy call for him to pit one lap earlier and have just a one lap undercut, and it looks like it's promoted him up into net P3 in this race, which is a bit crazy from where he was.
Yeah, he's done very well there. It's always difficult kind of to make that, you know, to be the first one into the pits and to make that move, you know, you go for it too early and then leave yourself hanging at the end of the race. But Big C's pulled that off beautifully and got himself right in the conversation of this you know, possible race win. But you know, for these guys, they've got a long way to go until they start catching the people we think are possibly on the one stop, starting on the soft compound tire. It's lap 8 and they're still going, so they're going to need to make it till well, I think about lap 14, 15 at least if they want to try and get this one stop to work. So they got a bit of a ways to go, but it's looking quite good for them so far. Stocky has actually lost the lead to Damn Daniel, though. Stocky with a phenomenal start. He's got a bit of a gap to Sam behind him, but Damn Daniel now he's gotten some freer air out of the train. Was able to catch up to Stocky and has passed him. So yeah, he's got some great pace here.
Damn Daniel was very, very fast in that social race we did at Paul Ricard a little while ago, as there was a Red Bull off in the gravel there. That was some incredibly aggressive driving from Racing Green as Vettel races down the inside of RC Sam into turn 10, and it looks like he has got that move done. And Vettel Race is now up into P3 and he's the third highest runner on this soft compound of tyre, who we assume everybody starting on this tyre is going to be going for a one stop, which is going to bring them into play later into this race. As, oh my goodness, this train is unbelievable. As that is Sam pulling into the pits, pretty much the last person on the Superstars to come into the pits, as Kian is all over the back of Harry there. And I don't think Kian has actually got DRS, has he? No, he hasn't got his DRS open. That's a little bit of a weird one. Harry does, and into turn 1 I think he's going to be able to stay ahead. Oh, now Kian has his DRS open, but he wasn't able to capitalise on Racing Green's poor exit out of the final corner, and he has to sit behind for another lap. But these two getting very, very close here as Kian runs very, very wide. That's very wide indeed. I'm surprised he didn't lose it there, actually. Well off onto the artificial tarmac runoff bit. We managed to hold it, and Kian up into P5 now as this battle between the soft runners. Oh, he almost runs into the back of Racing Green. The battle between these guys is really going to hinder them. For the one stop to work, you have to clear the traffic very quickly, and at the moment these guys aren't really doing that.
Yeah, just a note as well, you know, Alex on this two-stop behind them, he's within 8 seconds of that group already, so clearly these fresh softs working very well, and everybody I think in this leading group apart from Damn Daniel is losing, you know, a good 1.5 and maybe 2 seconds per lap to the guys on fresh soft. So yeah, it does seem like the tire wear here is pretty high, and you know, Big C not able to find his way past Spider yet either. Spider on his medium compound tires is kind of holding them up a little bit, although he's maybe not fallen quite as far off of Alex as I might have guessed. It's only 2 seconds at the moment, but you know, he's got Big C and Sean and Davidos queuing up right behind him, and you know, these are guys that, you know, would certainly, you'd say, expect to be in F1 next season. So I think they desperately need to find a way past Spider here as quickly as possible. But he seems to have some very good straight line speed, and Big C just can't find a way past at the moment.
Yeah, and this is causing Big C all kinds of problems. You've got to remember as well, he pitted the earliest of anybody in the field. So he has the oldest tyres of anybody in this train. So he really needs to make the most of them while they are still in their peak operating window, before they get too hot, before they get too worn. And sitting behind this Force India with the medium tyres on it is going to be causing him so many issues later in the race. His tyres are going to be scorching hot and probably a lot more worn than they ought to have been at this point in the race. And you can see now he's actually dropping a little bit behind the Force India, and now Sean is all over the back of him with those 1 lap fresher tyres. And Big C is just unable to find a way past the Force India. He just seems to be too slow out of the final corner, and it means he cannot get close enough into turn 1. His final sector just isn't good enough to be able to make a move.
Yeah, I can really see the dirty air through turn 9 there as Sean almost running out onto that gravel on the outside. That's where you really don't want to be. Very easy to lose the car and then spear off into the wall on the right there in that section of track. But yeah, it looks like these guys have got some pretty good pace. Sean and Davidos all over the back of Big C now, and it looks like Spider is just getting an incredible run through that final chicane, and Big C's not able to get close enough to him on this straight because he's just losing, you know, a good sort of 3, 4, 5 tenths through that final chicane alone to Spider, and that's really what's maintaining his position. So, you know, that could be a confidence thing. It could be a setup thing. I mean, it's possible that, you know, Spider's gone for a setup with, you know, maybe a higher ride height that might give him a bit better straight line speed, and also makes managing the curbs on this game much easier. It's the curbs are particularly deadly, so if you're running a lower ride height, that can give you better outright cornering speed, but then if you're going over curbs, it really unsettles the car. So that might be what Spider's gone for here.
Yeah, whatever he's done, Spider is incredibly quick in a straight line, and that is really helping him at this point in the race. But surprisingly, he hasn't actually dropped that far behind Alex. He's only losing a few tenths per lap, and with those medium tyres on his car, we will expect him to be faster towards the end of the race. Whatever tyres he goes on to at the end, he will be on fresher tyres and he will be faster than all of these guys, and even towards the end of this stint as well, when those soft tyres start going off, which I imagine, to be honest, they probably will be starting to go off already. He is going to be absolutely rapid, so maybe if he can keep track position ahead of Big C, this strategy is going to work to perfection. But the big thing is Big C keeps losing it out of that final corner every single time when he's been sat behind that Force India, but now he looks so much closer. Spider goes defensive into turn 1. Big C now pulling to the outside, but he just doesn't have enough straight line speed as he switches back to the inside, down the inside of Spider, but Spider is so much later on the brakes, and Big C still cannot find a way through and is being frustrated for another lap. He's going to sit behind in the dirty air through turn 3 and not be close enough for a move into turn 4. He's going to go for a dive. He is. He's down the inside of Spider again, and this time he makes it stick. It wasn't working into turn 1. He had to be more opportunistic, and he's down the inside into turn 4. An unorthodox overtaking opportunity, and now we can get his race back on track.
Yeah, what a great move from Big C. Absolutely fantastic driving for him. Saw the opportunity and just went for it. You've got to commit 100% going for a dive like that. Got the job done. And now he has to pull away, and he's got to try and get away from Spider fairly quickly, so that once, you know, Sean and Davidos get past, which you think is going to happen, Sean has a look up the inside into turn 10, and actually Spider had to kind of avoid Big C there under braking, and there we go, Sean straight up and through. So he does in half a lap what it took Big C about 5-6 laps to do, and he's right on the back of that McLaren again, and now it's up to Davidos to see if he can find a way past the Force India, he's got pretty good pace on those medium tires, but they still seem a bit slower than the softs, and it's going to take a little bit more running to get that done. Just another note as well, a lot of these guys on the soft compound tires, the ones that started on them, they're in the pits now and have gone on to the medium, so I don't know, I mean, it still seems like quite a long way to go to make it on the one-stops at the end of the race, or maybe the tyre wear is less than was expected and they're going for an undercut, but yeah, that's yet to be seen. I mean, they're all pretty much coming into the pits. It's only rFactor Green that's still out there on his soft compound tyres, and he's about to get Alex catching him very quickly, only 1.5 seconds behind it on much better tyres than he is.
Yeah, I think, looking at the evidence we're seeing at the moment, that the two-stop looks to be the superior strategy. We'll save our judgment until the end of the race, but at the moment it definitely looks like the two-stop is working for these guys. None more so than Alex, who is closing down on the last person to have not stopped in this race in rFactor Green, who is out front marginally at the moment. He is losing tenths of a second per sector really at this point, which is hardly ideal for his race, but I assume he'll be pulling into the pits at the end of this lap, as has everybody else with who started on these soft compound tyres. As if we think back to the beginning of this race, everybody outside the top 10 started on the soft, and they've all gone for pretty much the same strategy, as yeah, indeed, rFactor Green does pull into the pits, promoting Alex up into the lead of this race. And now he has to go. He has fresher tyres than Big C, and now he's got clean air. He has to be absolutely flying at this point in the race. Otherwise, the one-stoppers could come into play towards the end of this one.
Yeah, just noticed well, Davidos did make his way past Spider there into turn 10, went for a pretty late lunge on him. Spider almost had to get out of the way of Davidos, but he does get the position, so he's now up into 4th, and he's got slightly fresher tyres than the guys ahead. I was going to say as well, Sean is still all over the back of Big C, so maybe that just 1 lap tyre difference between these two guys is having a bit of an impact here, and it seems like Davidos is kind of catching up to them as well. So yeah, maybe the tyre drop-off on these softs is fairly large, and you know, Big C going for that undercut early, he's got himself the track position, but he's kind of struggling to hang with these guys in terms of pace with their fresher tyres.
But I think track position is definitely the most important thing around here. I mean, his strategy now looks like an absolute masterstroke. Had he pitted when everybody else had, he would have been down in P6. He was around where Ashbest is now. Had he not pitted 1 lap earlier, no way would he be up in P2 now. So I don't think we can question his strategy call too much. He had to try something different from where he was, and he pulled it off pretty much to perfection. It remains to be seen though how much of an effect that 1 lap older tyres is going to have on him towards the end of the race. What tyres is he going to have to go on to get to the end of this race? Are they going to go for another set of softs? Are they going to go for super softs? Are they going to have to go for mediums even, some of them? Who knows? Who even knows what set of tyres they have left to use, depending on what they used in qualifying, as Big C is now under all kinds of pressure from Sean, who is, although he's depleting his battery a little bit faster, it seems to me that he definitely has more pace in this race, and Sean really is staking his claim for F1 in this race. He was quicker than Alex in the opening stint of this race, and he seems to be absolutely rapid now as well.
Yeah, Sean's showing some very, very good pace here, but he's got to try and find a way through on Big C. And, you know, these guys, they've got to be thinking as well about the long game, because, you know, they must know that the one-stoppers are kind of coming for them, and they can't afford to lose too much time battling with each other, because then they'll lose out to the guys on the one-stop. It's, you know, one of those situations in a race where if you're in the middle of a race on a two-stop and you're fighting against an alternate strategy, sometimes it can be better to just somewhat work with the guys that you're close to on track, so that you don't end up losing multiple positions to the one-stoppers. But yeah, the leading guy on the one-stop that we think is one-stopping at least is Daniel at the moment, and he's only 3.5 seconds behind Hamilton in 8th place. So yeah, I mean, he's not lost too much time compared to this train, and it really is a train forming, because we've got from Big C all the way down to pretty much Hamilton in 8th place. We're all within each other's DRS, and starting to see a little bit deja vu back to the first stint with that massive train as well. I'm sure these guys are getting a bit tired of being in the dirty air.
Yeah, and while that was all going on, Sean is now having a look at Big C. Couldn't quite go around the outside into turn 1, but now he's got a much better run through turn 3. Look at the speed he's carrying through there. He's in the slipstream with Big C. Can he pull off the same move that Big C did into turn 4? And no, not quite. He didn't even look, actually. And I imagine he'll be trying to set it up for either turn 10 or turn 1, as he really needs to get past Big C. He has been sat behind him for a number of laps now, and the gap to Alex is only increasing at this point. It was as little as 2 seconds when it was Spider behind him, and it's now up to 3.8. So it looks like if Alex can clear the one-stoppers, that he has an incredibly good chance of winning this race. It looks like these guys behind are slightly too far behind to challenge him, as Big C is in the gravel slightly. Is this going to allow Sean to have a look into turn 10? Big C goes very late defensively. Sean runs into the back of him, I think loses a bit of front wing, forces Big C off the track, and he's managed to barge his way through, with Davidos working his way through as well. But Sean has definitely lost some front wing there. I wonder if Big C has got some damage as well. It looked like just a bit of a misunderstanding in the braking zone. They both went for the inside, and clearly that was not quite gonna work, as Sean actually picks up a time penalty. And yeah, Sean has got front wing damage and immediately pulls into the pit lane, and all of that is promoted Davidos up into P2, and Big C is down now into P3, but I'm not quite sure if his car is 100% either.
Yeah, Davidos, we'll see what pace he's able to show now. He did win as well around Bahrain last weekend, so yeah, he's clearly showing he's got some good pace on this game, but he's 5.3 behind Alex. He's going to work hard to kind of pull that in. Just a note as well, in terms of clearing the one-stoppers, in terms of gap from the leader, Daniel is only 10 seconds behind Alex, so there's absolutely no way that Alex will come out ahead of him when he pits. He's going to have to get a lot of overtaking done, because there's a big group of guys on the mediums still within his pit window.
Yeah, this is actually turning out to be an incredibly interesting race strategically, as there we go, looking at the gap to the leader between Daniel and Alex. It is only 10.2 seconds, and that gap, I believe, is coming down. So we thought Alex was having an easy time of it, but it looks like now he has a bit of a job on his hands to try and beat the one-stoppers. I'm not sure, well, Stocky is about 2.5 seconds behind Daniel, and he is the next of the one-stoppers, so it could even be that Alex has a huge amount of cars to overtake. If you look at all those cars on the mediums, he's probably going to have to overtake probably most of them, and that is an awful lot of traffic, so we'll see how that works out for him in this race as we come on to start lap 18 now for Big C and Davidos. So they come into turn 1. Big C is not close enough to Davidos to make a move, and this train is growing ever longer here. Contains Big C, Davidos, Spider, Ashbest, McGrady, and that's a lot of traffic. That is an awful lot of traffic, and it's only helping the one-stoppers, really.
Yeah, you got to think as well, Spider on those medium compound tires, they've surely got to be coming into their in terms of against the softs at this point. So we saw him lose out a bit earlier on in this stint compared to the guys on the softs. Now is the point where he needs to get the foot down. He's got quite a lot of energy stored, and he needs to start pushing his way through this field again and try and get himself up to the front of this at least, because you know, he can't afford to sit where he is and then get undercut by these guys when they pit and have to overtake both them and the one-stoppers in the final stint. It'll just be too much to do, so he needs to make the most of these tires now and try to get a place or two up the field, but Big C is really all over the back of Davidos, clearly showing that he's still got some strong pace, and it seems around this circuit it's so difficult for the car ahead to actually pull away. It's not easy to overtake, but in terms of sticking in that 1 second margin, oh hold on, because we've got Davidos and Big C in the pit. Spider continues, Ash Best continues, McGrady continues, and so does Hamilton. So those guys going for a bit of an undercut on the rest of the field, really as well, really kind of protective move, so that they don't get undercut from the guys behind. But yeah, they're making that move into the pits, and the soft compound tires, they managed to take them a good 12-13 laps there, so they should just about make it to the end on another set of softs, which I assume is what they're going for.
Yes, both of them gone for another set of soft tyres, and Davidos remains ahead as Sean has set the fastest lap of the race on those medium tyres, but with that wing change after the incident with Big C at turn 10, he is a long way behind. He is 4 or so seconds behind the others and on a slower set of tyres, so this race was looking so promising for Sean, but it appears it's not really worked out for him after that incident, and I have to say it was very unlucky. I don't think there was much he could have done. He'd already committed, and then Big C moved to defend as well. It looked like a bit of a 50-50 racing incident, if you ask me. I think both of them were entitled to go for the inside line. It's just unlucky that they both happened to do it at exactly the same time, and two cars on the same bit of track together is never really going to work out, particularly with such a tight corner as turn 10 at Spain as well. So a bit of bad luck for both of them, but I think Sean has shown more than enough pace to be considered for F1 in this race, at least in my opinion anyway, as Ash Best comes into the pits and he's responding to Davidos and Big C, who pitted a lap earlier. That is Alex as well into the pits, and I believe they are both going for a set of soft tyres.
Yeah, so all those guys making their way into the pit lane now, and that promotes one stoppers. And this is interesting because we've got Sam kind of holding up Stocky here on the mediums. Now Sam started the race on the super soft compounded tires, obviously pitted a few laps earlier than Stocky and some of the other guys on that one stop starting on the soft. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see whether Sam is capable of making these medium compound tires last until the end of the race. It seems like a very long way to go from when he pit, but we'll see if it's possible. He's certainly holding up Stocky though. H Eagle as well, kind of in this train, and Alex has got 7 seconds to make up on them. Although the time is absolutely tumbling down at the moment between him and the guys that are still on those mediums. So yeah, he's got a lot of work to do in this final stint, but he's got 13 laps to do it in. He really needs to be a good 1.5 seconds faster if he wants to catch up to the front runners.
While all that was going on, Stocky has absolutely steamed into the back of the car ahead of him and has completely pile-drived his front wing, and that is the end of his race. And I really do feel for him actually, because he had such a good start, such a good first half of the race, and the camera angle made it very hard for me to see, but it looked like a mistake from him braking too late and running into the back of the car in front. But don't want to make any accusations before I actually see it properly, and it's very, very unlucky for him, and I really do feel for him, because we've all been there, running into the back of a car in front, and it's one of the most frustrating things that you can do in league racing. But looking back to the front of the race, and Spider is ahead of Damn Daniel by 2.5 seconds, but we expect Spider to have to make another stop in this race, which means that Damn Daniel is actually very, 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 very close, and he's still 12.8 seconds ahead of Alex, so the gap to Daniel's probably 11.5 roughly, and that's a lot of time to make up in not very many laps, considering the number of cars that Alex has to overtake. He's got 4 cars probably that he's going to have to overtake between him and Damn Daniel, as well as closing the gap, and to me that seems like an almighty challenge.
Yeah, obviously, unlucky there for Stocky, but Alex will be very happy with that. It means one less car in his way on his charge up to the top here. He's got Sam a few seconds ahead of him, and yeah, he's just got to get his foot down and really just start getting his way into this gap, because if you're on a fresh set of softs compared to older mediums, I don't think 1.5 seconds per lap is out of the question, but you still need to look after these tires and make sure you maintain that kind of pace all the way through the stint. It's very easy in this kind of situation where you're on a 2-stop, you're chasing the 1-stoppers to push really hard in the opening laps, pull out 2 seconds a lap on the one stoppers, and then damage your tires to the point where you actually can't really catch them by the end of the race. So you've got to still be kind of patient here and look after the Pirellis. But he is catching Sam pretty quickly. He's taken a second out of him in half a lap that I've been watching here. So Alex showing that he's got the pace. He's got 11 laps to do it in, and for those guys ahead, they've got to be pretty nervous about this Ferrari coming up behind them.
Yeah, he is closing in at a rate of knots. He set the fastest lap of the race on that previous lap, and he's closed 3/10 in turn 1 alone, not turn 1, sector 1 alone, as he picks up a 3-second time penalty. And I believe I saw him pick one of those up earlier in the race as well, so that might be 6 seconds of penalties for Alex, which is, well, a pretty hefty amount at a track like Spain, where it's actually really quite easy not to corner cut. I wasn't expecting people to get penalties at this track, but I guess if you haven't done that much practice, it's very easy to make slight one-off mistakes, and you get pinged with a corner cutting warning on this game. So I guess we can forgive him. It's a social race. We'll let him off on this occasion. But 6 seconds of time penalties at a track like this really isn't that great. But on the actual on-track stuff, he's closing right up to the back of Sam, and he's taken second and a bit out of him on this lap alone. He is absolutely flying, and I imagine he'll be able to just drive past on this straight in the slipstream with the DRS, and I don't think Sam's going to fight it. There's absolutely no point in him fighting it, as Alex moves ahead into turn 1 as VP McGrady sets the fastest lap of this race. And we saw him spin off earlier in the race, but looks like he's found some pace all of a sudden.
Yeah, he's doing very well here, and we've got Davidos, I think, just made his way past Kian there, so he's nabbed a position off of one of the one-stoppers as well. Big C just about to come up behind Kian too, and these guys have got to try and clear this traffic as quickly as possible. David now coming up behind Vettel Racer. It's crucial for these two stoppers to really only need one attempt at the overtake. If you start battling, you're going to lose so much time, so you've got to pick your moment, put that energy mix up to overtake, get the fuel mix up and rich, and just make the overtake happen in one go, because if you start battling, then you're never ever going to catch the cars that are up the road. Davidos maybe having a look down here into turn 10. He's very late on the brakes, just about gets it slowed down, and he has the car ahead and gets the move done. That's beautiful from David. Really aggressive lunge there into turn 10, but had the confidence on the brakes and pulled it off.
Whoa! Sorry to cut you off there, but Kian has absolutely binned it in the final sector, and I think he's taken Big C with him there, and that was an almighty crash, and it didn't look like anybody touched Kian. I think he just lost it of his own accord, and Big C was just a complete passenger in that one, and Big C is having to pull into the pits for what I assume is a new front wing, and that is probably the end of Kian's race as well, as he also pulls into the pits. And that looked like a really unfortunate incident. It looked like Kian just innocently lost it on the exit of the corner. It got a little bit too wide on the curb and just couldn't control the car. And he was completely sideways, almost 90 degrees across the track, and there was pretty much nowhere for Big C to go, as those two find themselves towards the back of the grid, and Big C retires from the session. I don't think there was any hope of him getting points from this race at this point, and that's incredibly unlucky. It looked like he pulled off a really clever strategy up until this point in the race, and I honestly don't think there's a huge amount he can do about that one. That's incredibly unlucky for him.
Yeah, and a grid this close as well, one of those incidents is really enough to spell the end of your race. The top 12 just covered by 21 seconds at the moment. That's great to see 24 laps into a race. We've got Alex right on the back of Eagle here, and Eagle's a guy, he came into the he came into F2 in the middle of season 14 and has improved massively since then. He kind of came in as somewhat of a midfielder and has just been steadily getting quicker and quicker ever since. He did pretty well last season. I think he finished third in the championship in F2, although he's got an F1 driver coming up behind and straight past him. Alex just storming past on the straight, so not able to do anything about that. I don't think it's really Eagle's fight here today. He's going to be more worried about guys like David and possibly McGrady coming through as well. But yeah, Alex with some great straight line speed and gets the move there. He's now got 5 seconds to damn Daniel in front, and interestingly enough, Spider, he's still going on these medium tires. Is he going to try and take these to the end?
Well, it certainly looks that way. I'm not sure what the point in pitting now would be. He's pretty much committed to this strategy. Who knows how far these medium tires can go. He's still got a pretty long way to go in this race. He's got a fairly large amount of laps, and he's already done 19 laps on that set of tyres. If he manages to get this to the end, it will be some kind of miracle. But if you look at Daniel, he hasn't really caught Spider that much at all. That gap has been pretty much stationary at around 1.8, 1.9 seconds for this entire stint, and Daniel hasn't been able to close up to Spider much at all, and Spider is holding his own pretty well up at the front, and we questioned his decision to go on the medium tyres at the time, but now looks like he's proving us all wrong, and he's still, what, 6 and a bit seconds ahead of Alex, so he's still well within a shot of winning this race.
Yeah, I'm going to get my notepad out here for this strategy. That's very interesting from Spider, and, you know, I mean, maybe he'll bail into the pits for a set of super softs. But you would have thought if he was going to do that, he might have done it a lap or two ago. So I think he will just try and hang it out. And you've really got to wonder the state of his tires at the moment, whether he's at risk of getting a puncture before the end of this race. You know, it just kind of comes down to personal preference in terms of what you want to do as a driver. I mean, do you bail into the pits and make sure that you finish the race with a few points, or do you risk it all and potentially try and get a win and, you know, maybe end up with nothing if you get a puncture? Seems like Spider is going for the latter option here, trying to make these medium tires last definitely longer than I've ever seen a set of tires last at Spain. We'll see if he's capable of pulling it off. Alex is still just making his way into this gap against Daniel. It's now down to 4.5 seconds. He's still got quite a lot of time, so I think he will catch him by the end of the race, so long as he can keep this pace up. A little bit further down the field, David is up on the back of Sam now as well, but you know, he's not been quite moving through the field in the same way that I think he would have hoped for. He has a very, very big cut of the final chicane. I kind of realized he sort of understeered there a bit at the first apex and decided he didn't really fancy the second one. And actually, he's got a great run on Sam as well. So I'm sure that if Sam watches this back after the race, he might feel a little bit robbed there. But David does get the move done and is up into 5th place. And now Sam will kind of have to focus behind a little bit because McGrady is coming up behind him. And we'll see if Sam's able to, you know, maybe hang on to the back of David. If he's capable of just sticking within that DRS, then that might help him defend from McGrady. But it's going to be hard for him because his tires are very, very worn at this point.
Yeah, I mean, nice corner cut from Davidos, but it was a fairly simple move in the end. I think he probably would have got that one done regardless. Looking back towards the front, though, I was mentioning that gap between Daniel and Spider remaining the same. It's now complete. It's plummeted completely, and it's now almost less than 1 second. And as well as that, Alex is now closing in at a rate of knots, and that gap is now down to almost under 4 seconds. So don't go anywhere, people. I think we're going to have plenty of racing still left at the very end of this race. But back to Spider's strategy, I really do like what he's doing. I love these kind of full send, absolutely throw everything at it, no one expects you to do it kind of strategies, and I don't think anyone was expecting him to go for a one-stop starting from the super soft tyres, and I think he's completely surprised us, and it appears he's completely surprised everybody else, because nobody else has gone for this strategy, and I have full admiration for him because of it.
Well, we do have Eagle and Sam. I think they both started on the supers. I think they ran much longer though. That's the difference. They ran much longer. They went to about lap sort of 8 and definitely, you know, kind of fell back into the clutches of the guys that started on the softs during that first stint. Whereas, you know, Spider, he basically pit with the 2 stoppers, except just for a set of mediums, and is now, I think, kind of, you know, almost bailed onto a 1 stop to try and maintain this track position, and is still keeping these tires going. And I'll just take a look at his lap times here. I mean, he's not really dropping off in terms of lap time. Daniel's definitely quicker, but it's not as if Spider's tires are falling away. He's actually almost getting quicker as this thing goes on. So yeah, I mean, he's making these work, and, you know, Daniel, he is a few tenths quicker per lap, but it's I don't know, it's maybe not enough to get the move done. He's going to have to do something smart if he wants to get past here. He takes a massive amount of curb at that first apex, absolutely hammers it. Gets a bit of oversteer on the exit there. But I don't know about you, but that final chicane at Spain here, it's kind of terrifying. The curbs on that are absolutely massive, and it's so easy to just throw away a race there. So I think Daniel's going to be a little careful of that he doesn't get too aggressive with it and ends up spinning out.
Yeah, and those corners do take an awful lot of beating throughout the entire race, and people jump over those curbs so often and gain quite a lot of time because of it. But it is a bit of a fine art cutting that chicane because there is a monster of a curb on the inside. So, well, these guys seem to have mastered it pretty well, judging by their performances today. But Daniel now closing right up to the back of Spider, and maybe those 7-lap fresher tyres that he has are starting to tell at this point. The mediums tend to be the same pace for a long time and then drop off suddenly, and they just kind of hit a cliff. And maybe that's what's happening now, as Alex is now only 2.7 seconds behind, and Daniel is well within DRS. He's much closer. He wasn't the last lap. Look how close he's getting into turn 10, almost steaming into the back of that Force India. So we're about to start lap 30 of 33 of this Spanish Grand Prix. The gap between the two leaders is 0.4 of a second, and we have a flying Ferrari 2.7 seconds back on a pretty fresh set of soft tyres. Don't go anywhere, people. This is going to get very exciting. So coming through the final corner, on board with Daniel here. He's going to have DRS, he's going to have slipstream. This is going to be his best chance so far to take the lead of this race. These guys have got to remember, if they start battling, Alex is right behind them. So into turn 1, can Daniel make a move? Spider goes defensive. Daniel has to look to the outside. He's trying to go all the way around the outside. Spider leaves him a little bit of space. He has to take a lot of curb on the outside, and he cannot find a way through, as Spider's tyres are really starting to go off at this stage, but he is still managing to find a way to defend. Is Daniel going to go for it into turn 4? No, he's not, but he's so close to the back of the Force India again, and he is still right on the back of Spider, putting him under so much pressure, and he's got to clear the Force India now before that Ferrari arrives right on the back of the Red Bull, and this is getting so exciting now.
Yeah, Daniel, he's got to get the move done, I think, on this lap or on the main straight, because Alex is reeling these guys in 1.7 seconds now. Spider's tires are starting to fall away, but interestingly, Daniel, he wasn't actually in overtake along that straight, so I'm not quite sure what he was doing there. If I were him, I'd be trying to get this done straight away, and these guys very sort of even in terms of the energy that they still have, so yeah, he needs to get this this engine right up to overtake and try and get this move done, because he needs Spider really to block Alex for him, as there's contact between the two of them, and actually Spider has lost the position, just a bit of a touch on the rear from Daniel, and is he going to let him back through? I think that's what's happening here. He is. So Spider retakes the lead. Daniel realized that the contact gave him the position, and he actually lets him back through. And I look at this, Alex is right on the back of him, shows the nose, looks at the inside, not quite late enough on the brakes. I think more so letting Daniel know that he's there. But yeah, good sportsmanship from Daniel, and he's only got a couple laps now to get this move done on Spider.
I think more than worrying about the move on Spider, he's got to worry about Alex behind him, who is so quick. I'm surprised he couldn't quite make the move stick into turn 1, actually. He just has so much more grip than these guys, as all three of them lock up into turn 3, and there's contact between the Force India and the Red Bull again. I wonder if Daniel's lost any of his front wing there. He got incredibly close. I think he may have just bumped the back of the Force India. That incident they had at the final chicane was a little bit weird, but look at this. The top 3 cars, as well on almost the penultimate lap of this race, are all together coming into turn 10. The Force India goes defensive, Alex goes to the outside, Daniel goes to the outside, and the Red Bull makes the move stick around the outside, but he's so wide, and Spider's come back at him into the next corner, and he's still ahead, and somehow Spider maintains the lead of this race, and that was some impeccable defending. Daniel was just slightly too wide, got all over the curb on the exit, and couldn't manage to make the move stick. He's had so many chances in these last few laps to make it work, and he hasn't been able to do it. So, as we come across the line to start lap 32 of 33, look how wide Alex is out of the final corner. Daniel on the back of Spider once again. Spider already going defensive. Daniel looking to the outside for turn 1. Can Alex get involved as well? He's looking to the inside of both of them. Maybe Daniel ran the outside, and finally he takes the lead of this race, and he's finally been able to clear Spider, and he moves up ahead of the Force India, and now he has to go. He has to hope that Spider can hold up Alex if he wants to have any hope of winning this race. Will Alex go for a move into turn 4? Spider goes defensive again, and Alex trying to look all the way around the outside. What a move, almost on the grass there, and manages to make it stick, and Alex's charge through the field continues. He now has 1 lap left pretty much, and 1 car left to overtake. What a drive this would be if he could make it work. The 2-stop versus the 1-stoppers, and it's coming down to this final lap as they
cut you off there, Spider. He's got a puncture. The tires have given up on him. He's just spun it out onto the gravel, and that's basically race over him. His tires have just given up. He tried this really adventurous strategy, couldn't quite make it work. But you know, props to him. That was bold and almost brilliant, but not quite. But now we've got Alex all over the back of Daniel. move there as well. Shaw making his way just past Vettel Racer. A lot of battling going on here in the background that we're not quite able to cover just because of this battle up front. But Alex now, he's in the slipstream of Daniel. He's got a bit more energy to work with as well. Up in overtake for him. And can Daniel defend on this final lap? He surely must defend the inside here into turn 1, as this is going to be Alex's best opportunity to get the move done. He swings it all the way around the outside. They're side by side through the apex of turn 1, and he just about gets the car ahead through 2, and now up through the long right-hander of turn 3, and that is the move done. Alex into the lead of the race. Daniel just without the tires to be able to hang on there with the Ferrari, and Alex pulling off a 2-stop strategy here in Spain. What an amazing race this has been, both on track and in terms of strategy as well. Really, really enjoyed this.
Wow, that was absolutely fantastic. A perfect move around the outside, and I think that one was worthy of winning any race. But I think the best move Alex has pulled off in this race was around the outside of Spider at turn 4. That was just sublime, and I really do feel for Spider actually. He's so unlucky. Came so close to pulling off that strategy to perfection, and now he's going to find himself all the way down in 11th place with no points. But as we come into the final sector of the final lap of this race, Alex is going to lead us home. And what a drive it has been from him. We don't know how it's going to shape up with penalties, but he has been, other than that, completely impeccable today. Pulled off the 2-stop to perfection through the final chicane for the last time. There is absolutely nothing that Daniel can do through the final corner and up to the line. Alex is going to win the race with a fantastic drive, and damn Daniel with an incredible effort, you have to say, to bring it home in P2 and actually up to the P1 with Alex's penalties, and I think you've got to say that's fully deserved. Perfect strategy, perfect drive, did pretty much everything right and managed to avoid penalties as well as it's McGrady actually up in P3. What a drive from him after that spin on lap 1 with RC Sam in 4th, the H-Eagles in 5th with Davidos down in 6th. Probably expected a little bit more from him in this race. Ash Best, a pretty solid 7th. It probably wasn't an ideal strategy for him. The 2-stop didn't work unless you had clear air, and it didn't seem like he had any of that all race. He was always involved in battles, but a respectable drive nonetheless with Vettel Racer in 8th. Sean a disappointing 9th after that contact with Big C and the resulting wing damage, and Hamilton the last man in the points in P10, and then our valiant hero RC Spider, who is still rolling around with that puncture, and I really do feel for him. He hasn't even bothered to pit. He's just cruising around and taking a few victory laps for the crowd just to soak up the adoration for that strategy.
Yeah, waving to the fans, I think. On the final lap there as well, just as Alex was coming across the line, Davidos got the move done on Eagle around the outside at turn 10. It was a beautiful move, but he's actually gone, well, he was 3rd on track and has lost all of those positions on penalties. McGrady, who finished 5th on track, has nabbed the podium here based on those penalties, and that is one thing David is somewhat known for, is picking up quite a few corner cutting penalties through races.
I'm not surprised with what we saw in that final chicane.
Well, yeah. I think the less said about that final chicane, the better. But yeah, I've definitely seen that a few times in the past. David missing out on some positions due to penalties. This happened here again. But yeah, I mean, what a fantastic race. I'm really looking forward to racing this track in season 16 because, wow, that was great on the strategy. The 1 and 2 stop very even there, I think, in terms of pace. So plenty of good battling, good overtaking, and you know, almost a miraculous strategy from Spider to pull it off. I think if he'd maybe just gone a couple laps longer on those super soft tires, he might just have gotten it done, and he might, you know, maybe regret not running slightly longer in that first stint.
Yeah, maybe. Ifs and buts. Everyone has it after every single league race ever, but there you go. Confirmation of the final result. Damn Daniel won with a superb 1-stop ahead of Alex in P2, who crossed the line first but had too many time penalties, which is a little bit weird at a track like this. But McGrady came home in P3 with no penalties, and the same for Sam as well in P4. Perfectly clean drives from both of them, and that's really paid dividends at the end of this race. But then it's H-Eagles in 5th with Davidos a disappointing 6th, you've got to say. Ashbest in 7th, Vettel Racer 8th, Sean 9th, and then Hamilton rounding out the points in P10, and then our favourite driver, our driver of the race, RC Spider in 11th. But seeing as the purpose of this race was to assess drivers for F1 and 2, who would you say has caught your eye today?
I've got to say, it was a really good race from Damn Daniel. Very good race from Spider as well. You know, puncture kind of, you know, ruining his parade there in the final lap. So those guys definitely put on a good show. But I mean, you've got to say for all of these guys, you know, the top 10 in 17 seconds by the end of a 33-lap race, considering the amount of battling that was going on and you know, the number of overtakes, to have the top 10 be that close after 33 laps. Yeah, I think everybody here has done very, very well, and I don't think that anybody can be too disappointed with their performance, because they've all shown some really, really solid pace. And I'm kind of scratching my head trying to, you know, this was meant to make things in terms of placements easier, but might even be more difficult after that race.
Well, I have to say thank you very much for joining me in the commentary box. Thank you very much to everybody for watching the stream. Also, thanks to the drivers for putting on a fantastic show. I hope you'll join us for the start of Season 16, which is, I believe, is September 30th. It's a few weeks' time. I'm sure, if that's anything to go by, we'll have an absolutely fantastic show for you every single week. PS4 is, I believe, 7 PM, PC at 8, and then Xbox the hour after that. But yeah, as I said, thank you all very much for watching, and we will see you for Season 16. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Good night.